You know, math. Wow, math. Incorporates numbers. It incorporates shapes, letters, symbols, the likes of which no one has ever seen before, until they're introduced to it for the first time. And, I just think that it's interesting. Someone sat down and, as the saying goes, decided that it was time to add letters. Someone decided that it was time to add shapes, to really invoke the importance and intricacy of mathematics, to truly elevate the study to the next level, to take math from something as simple as a tool to figure out how many apples your neighbor ate and how many sheep you get to take from them as a result, to something that could be used to topple nations and cause incredible levels of grief for young people. My father used to do math. And, when you live with someone who has committed to performing sequences of arithmetic on a regular basis, it can really take a toll on you, Suddenly, waking up in the morning and having a bowl of Cheerios isn't so simple. Now, you have to quantify exactly, or roughly, how many Cheerios end up going into a bowl of Cheerios. How much milk do you need to add to that bowl of Cheerios in order to achieve an ideal cereal to milk ratio? How does the type of milk contribute to the overall density and or lack thereof, or how does it essentially affect the Cheerios in that bowl? Is there a difference? A measurable difference between using traditional milk, bovine mammary fluids, or milk extracted from cashews, or almonds, or what have you? What sort of impact does that have on the cereal? And how does that cereal then impact you? All of these questions have to be asked as soon as you start to bring math into the question, or into the equation, rather. And it didn't stop there. Suddenly, you start thinking about the world differently, because you have to, everything changes. Interestingly enough, one of the things that was the most difficult to accept and handle was the constant theorization of how time really works in relation to things like something as meaty as a jar of pickles. See, my family growing up, we really enjoyed pickles. And as a result, there was scarcely a time when we didn't have the pickle fridge, a a refrigerator dedicated to just pickles that sat next to the regular refrigerator. There was rarely a time when we didn't have an enormous supply of kosher dill pickles. And there came a point where, for the necessity, or simply for the sake rather, of implementing math into every facet of our lives, my father, he went through that refrigerator and discerned that we ought to make sure that we have enough pickles to survive the apocalypse. Because the family, we ate so many pickles on a regular basis. Probably did develop some kind of health complication as a result of eating as many pickles as we did, but that's a story for another time. So anyway, once he discerned exactly how many pickles we would need to survive, say, nuclear fallout for, well, at least a few years, suddenly, again, as a result of math, our life changed. Our idyllic home in the suburbs suddenly became an entire storage facility dedicated to keeping, maintaining, and eventually pickling our own cucumbers. It had gotten to the point where, well, my parents were considering having a 15th child, and the room that was going to be given to that child, plans changed. That was another room in our house that would be dedicated to the storage of what we eventually came to call the end time pickles. Pickles that were designed with a purpose of sustaining us through anything. It was known as the End Times Pickle Room. And I will never forget how grateful we all were for my father's forethought, for the pickle room, for the absence of what would have been a 17th child in our household, which was starting to get a lot after 10. Because there was a dreadful summer storm. Now, in this particular part of the country, you may not be familiar, so I'll explain a bit. So, in a winter storm, you get, what do they call them? Squalls or something. Copious amounts of wind and snow, and, it's a winter storm. It's about what it sounds like. Well, let me tell you about a summer storm. A summer storm is unlike anything most people have experienced. They tend to be very localized, sort of like having aurora borealis in your kitchen or something. They're very local to an area, to a space, which is part of the reason why most people have never heard of one or seen one before, and might not believe that they exist, but they do. So, to describe a summer storm, imagine a concentrated laser from the sun, and it's pointed at your neighborhood, your small neighborhood in the suburbs of a non-disclosed location, and it's visible. So if you were approaching the neighborhood from, say, a distance of 5 miles, you would actually be able to look up. And you could look up and you could see a column of light. And basically everything within that column is close to or actually on fire. It is about as terrifying as it sounds. Again, incredibly localized. Most meteorologists and, other experts of the sort are completely unaware of them because they are intense but brief and, again, incredibly localized, very real, and very scary. And our house in the suburbs of a non-disclosed location, or nondescript, undisclosed, somewhere. We experience them not so infrequently that it didn't seem feasible to develop the pickle room. So anyway, in the summer of an undisclosed year, an undisclosed month, and an undisclosed day, during an undisclosed hour, and taking place over the course of an undisclosed amount of time, we experienced a summer storm. The entire building caught on fire within a matter of minutes. And thankfully, the pickle room, with a attached and reinforced delivery system, was able to deliver temperature-controlled pickles to the basement of the house. And only because of that room and all of those pickles that we had spent so much time saving were we able to survive that summer storm. And so, at the end of the day, the moral of the story is, if you play with fire, one day you're bound to get burned. But if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, bear in mind that you might live under a rock. And if you do live under a rock, just know that if you mess with the bull, you get the horns. We grew up in a very strange household. It cannot be overstated. But that's really only the beginning of the story of how I came to own 97% of all pickle companies across the globe. And, I owe my life to pickles. I don't know where I would be. I don't know where my family would be without the advent of sticking cucumbers in a jar. And, it's a part of my life. It's a part of my legacy. It's a part of what I will teach my children, and my children will teach their children, and my children will teach their children, and, and my children's children, my children's 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 children, my children's 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 children, and so on and so forth. And, I just think that It's important. Math is very important because math gave birth to this company, Pickle Co. And I don't know where we would be without it. So, thank you very much for joining me here today and listening to my TED Talk. Backstage, we're going to have a wide selection of pickles available for consuming. So please join me. And I will see you next time.